Hey MMT followers, Christina Fuges with MoldMaking Technology back for another quick MMT chat. My guest today is Mark Gauvain. Hello, Mark. He is also one of our new Editorial Advisory Board members. So you can check him out in his bio on moldmakingtechnology.com. So welcome, Mark.
Hey, good morning, Christina. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So we talked a little bit before this chat that things have changed for you over the past few months. So why don't you give us an update on, since COVID hit, the impact of that in terms of your job and your career and what happened where you are right now?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I just recently left Jabil, actually, after almost 8 years. And right now I'm doing some contracting, some consulting, actually. So I'm consulting a few businesses in the space, in the industry. I'm working with a Western U.S. Injection molding company. They're looking at expanding their tool making capacity, both internal captive and then the procurement strategy. So that's interesting. Also working with a hot runner manufacturer. So a hot half company that design and manufacture hot runner systems for engineering materials challenging applications. And they're an offshore company, but they're looking to break into new markets and new geographies and so forth. So that's interesting.
So in North America,
just happening.
In North America, they're looking to break into North America?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Well, remember us, right? We can help with that.
Precisely, yeah. So this is all new. This is like brand new, so I can't really elaborate much right now. And then I'm working with Metalworks. I don't know if you know Metalworks. They're a asset management company.
Okay.
They run auctions and they buy and sell a lot of capital equipment, really specific to the plastics processing industry. A lot of injection molding machines, blow molding machines, and a lot of the auxiliary machines. So I can talk about Metalworks. I've been working with them for some time now. Great company, super bunch of guys over there. So there's a lot of things going on. Yeah, for sure.
Are you helping them locate buyers for the machines? Is that what your role is with them?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. And I have to ask, have you noticed any sort of trend in what people are looking for in terms of equipment this year?
Yeah, it's, food packaging, medical device packaging, consumer packaging, food and beverage, and really the whole pharma space and diagnostics area is really taking off, due to the pandemic and everything else.
Exactly.
So, a lot of the packaging for those type of products.
Okay. So knowing your past experience and all this history you have, you're quite marketable. I would think all this vast experience and knowledge, right? But what do you have an idea, like where, I know what you're doing right now is new, but do you have an idea of what you're looking to do next?
Yeah, I'm actually talking to 2 different companies about some board seats. So that's interesting. That's fun. So with the consulting and some board seat opportunities, that looks like what I'll be doing here for the next year or so. That'll keep me busy. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So looking back on what you've done so far, way up to Jabil, what has been the best part of your career within mold manufacturing so far? What's a highlight?
Yeah, I would say going back to when I was on the bench, actually designing and building molds back in the day, right? And it was a little different at that time. I was 21 years old, designing and building injection molds, and at that time, you did everything yourself, right? You were designing the tools. Whether it's mold-based manufacturing, cores and cavities, cutting electrodes, all the fitting, strategizing on schemes for gating and parting lines and ejection and all that. Back in the day, we did that all ourselves. Now, with the advent of technology and a lot of the sophisticated equipment and everything, now it's a lot of the mold shops, of course, are compartmentalized. Yeah. So focusing on, you have a wire EDM department, you have a fitting department, you have, electrode manufacturing, you have engineers, you have designers, and so there's very little cross-pollination is what I've found in the industry today. And, that's required, obviously, for lead time, time to market. turnaround time, and of course, cost.
Exactly. So most people, I would say, look back and say exactly what you said. It's that hands-on, it's those early days. So it's almost like the new technology is awesome, but it robs that next generation of that feeling, right? Or learning that way. So outside of that, what experience in your career, because I would think that's like the pivotal thing, getting your hands dirty and getting in there. So if that being gone, it's sad to me. But regardless, what in your experience has taught you the most about mold making? Like what part of that career? And is it the bench work?
Yeah, I think it's, we're moving into like a leadership position. You can see the importance of a lot of the various disciplines, right? So if I was talking to a young person in the industry now who's learning, whether it's mold making or mold design, whatever it may be, or operations, there's a lot of other tributaries out of mold making. Some of the big mold shops, there's procurement, there's supply chain, purchasing, program management's a huge part of mold construction these days, particularly with the large, sophisticated, expensive tools. So, PMP certification is really important. Certainly the quality aspect of the business in companies that are working in like highly regulated markets, building tooling for medical devices and pharmaceutical packaging, perhaps. Knowledge of FDA, ISO 14385, the IQ, OQ, PQ aspect is real important. So these areas in themselves are, could be career paths that most of at least the larger mold making companies, have these type of departments. Yeah.
And I don't think that the industry's marketed well enough that way, right? Where you're right, there's these different channels, there's different ways you can go, but if it's not,
that's right.
If it's not marketed that way, kids won't see it that way. They'll see themselves one way and that's it. So
that's right.
That's good to hear that. It translates to many different career opportunities. Yeah. So you have worked for a lot of big manufacturers over the years, in varied positions, but all that global experience is intriguing to me, especially nowadays. I mean, the business climate is so different just this year, let alone the past 5 to 10 years. So
of course,
with that perspective, there's got to be a lot of insight and advice that you can share to help the small to mid-sized mold manufacturers or mold builders understand how to better compete in this global economy. I mean, and now more than ever, they need to do that. So share, what do you got to share about that?
Yeah. I'd submit that the small to mid-sized companies really should not be afraid of partnering, with other companies that maybe have a niche or a specialty, or even, partnering with, an offshore or an Asian mold making company or component supplier. There's a lot of niche aspects of the industry. There's a lot of specialization out there, and a little bit of research, you can find out who is good at doing what. Maybe it's building molds for gears, maybe LCP molds or liquid silicon rubber type tooling. Form factor is a big thing also. Large parts, small parts. But I would not be afraid to look, spend some time, invest some time, and to look and see how you can partner with other companies, in foreign companies perhaps too. Spares is another good example. If you're building tools where there's a lot of spare componentry as part of the life cycle of the tool, oftentimes you can find partners who can fulfill that need over time. Yeah.
It's funny. Do you feel that there's this sensitivity still when you say to partner with somebody overseas, especially? I mean, I still hear a lot about that from the American manufacturer, right? That still can be a sensitive issue with all that's gone on. What do you hear about that in terms of encouraging them to do that?
Yeah, there's sensitivity there. I do feel, with the pandemic still ongoing, I believe there's going to be a localization around a lot of the supply chains, and I think there'll even be like an East Coast localization and a West Coast localization. So, I think a lot of the products that have actually been built and imported over the years, some of that's going to come back. And if you look at like the the 5G space, the Internet of Things, the big companies like, Facebook and Amazon and Google, the whole home automation aspect, all these different gadgets and robots and everything we're going to have in the home. That's coming fast. And not all of that will be made in China. They'll have to come up with localized supply chain for a lot of that. And so that's an opportunity for companies like, mold making firms. Another good example is with this pandemic, the e-commerce. You have to look at e-commerce and where that's going and how mold making companies can take advantage of that. And you look at like a company like Amazon, who's really centered to the whole e-commerce pivot. Amazon, they built hundreds of thousands of robots working in their fulfillment centers right now. Okay. Those robots, there's a lot of plastics in those robots, right? And those are largely in North America, those fulfillment centers. And robots like that, that supply base and that industrialization is akin to really automotive. They have a chassis, they have wire harnesses, they have cowlings, lighting, sensors, camera modules, bumpers.
Right.
So those robotic palletizers are like an automobile. And, that's just one example, Amazon. So there's a big pivot in these industries that I believe mold making companies and adjacent industries certainly can benefit from that.
That's interesting. It's really it's looking at non-traditional opportunities, right? It's getting outside of that normal thinking and looking at today's high-tech companies and seeing that correlation to what you can do for them. Like, I don't know how, you probably know better than me, I don't know how often that a typical shop is thinking that way. Like, you got to look to the future, and that's where that next generation comes in, because that's the work that will excite them to come work for you.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And the electrification of automobiles, you look at what California has just passed. So by 2030, I believe it is, so 2035, 15 years from now, they want to have all traditional automobies off the road. So you look at what that actually means, and for mold makers in our industry, we have to determine how we're going to support that, right? So the automobile is changing, and that doesn't mean a lot of the molded plastics and the tooling needs going to go away. It's just going to be different, the miniaturization, different materials, and so forth. So it's important for your readers and these mold making companies to look and see what that means to their business and how they can best pivot to take advantage of these changes, because change is happening actually faster than it ever has.
Exactly. I also hear there's an opportunity too with all this, in terms of reshoring and suppliers coming back. There's, especially in the medical space, right, in pharma, that redundant supplier need. They're all going to need these suppliers on this. They're going to demand them. So that's a whole opportunity too. If you can work in that space, basically sign up to be one of those, because they don't want this, what just happened, to happen again, right? We don't want to not have our own ventilators or respirators. So you got to start thinking that way too, right? Yeah. Do you have, so when we talk about them keeping up to speed with that, and outside of, well, you really can't go to trade shows right now, or reading the journals or the technical magazines, how do you advise a mold builder to stay on top of all this, when often you hear they're just getting it done every day, right? And then we're saying, all right, but you got to think a lot further along the line to stay on top of all this very quickly changing technology that might be an opportunity for you. How do you recommend they stay on top of that when they're a small, mid-sized shop?
You have to pay attention. You have to look at the market trends and so forth. And, I'd go as far to say that companies should be looking to really specialize. The day of the generalist, that day is probably come and gone, right? So specializing, whether, again, it's micro molding, whether it's, sophisticated materials like liquid silicon rubber, or LCP, another area would be like the convergence of different materials in components and finished goods. So you have a lot of thermoplastics, elastomers, metals, electronics, glass, a lot of that is all coming together into like one component.
Okay.
So, technologies like, in mold assembly, a number of companies are getting into that. So really, my message would be pay attention to where the market's going and have a good understanding of where you should be investing in the future and where you should, again, be pivoting the company to support that and take advantage, because there's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there. It's just a matter of knowing where to look, and then executing, of course.
Got it. All right. So lastly, before I let you go, I have to ask about COVID. So we're still in it. How do you see, first of all, what's your number one concern about it moving forward, and how do you see mold making emerging from this experience, we'll call it?
Yeah, I think, the work from home culture that's kind of evolved now over the last 6 months, that's not going to go away, right? I think we'll revert back to some kind of normalcy, but, the whole remote aspect of working doesn't necessarily apply to, factories and workshops necessarily, but I think companies should be prepared to look at what they can do better, what they can do faster, more effective in a remote environment. And I know some mold making companies and injection molding companies are looking at, distance qualification, so remote qualification, with the emergence of really powerful online tools and so forth, you can actually achieve quite a bit online.
Yes, I agree.
In real time, right? So you can take an entire work cell, and in real time you can see, what the process is. Are you meeting the cycle times? Are you meeting, cosmetic qualities and dimensional criteria and so forth? A lot of that can be done in real time online, and that's something I think that should be a big focus for sure.
It's funny how all that, somebody said to me recently, calling COVID the great accelerator, and what you just said is an example. I think a lot of ways we were headed that way anyway, and this has just pushed us, because if you weren't already looking at that and getting comfortable with doing stuff remotely, it's forced on you now because you haven't been able to do it. You can't get to that customer, so you have to invest in ways to do it virtually. So I think we were headed that way anyway. And again, that is an aspect that could be quite interesting and intriguing to the next generation. I think that's a positive of all this too. It's putting an industry that some people might consider in the dark ages, even though you and I both know it is not. But to a younger generation, they could think that this, all that we're talking about, is going to put it in a spotlight that it is absolutely not, right? We're working with things and in things that are today's technology. So it's exciting if you look at it the right way.
Yeah, well stated. Yeah.
So Mark, thank you for your time. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot from you in the coming year or so as your new venture unfolds. So just keep in touch with me. I'm sure I'll keep in touch with you.
Excellent. Thank you, Christina. Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
And for everyone watching out there, for everything mold making, visit moldmakingtechnology.com. Stay safe and healthy, and more importantly, stay informed and stay inspired.